In Scripture, 1 Chronicles chapter 16, verses 8 through 15. And it reads, Give thanks unto the Lord, call upon his name, make known his deeds among the people. School.
Sing unto him, sing songs unto him, talk ye of all his wondrous works.
Glory ye in his holy name. Let the heart of them rejoice that seek the Lord. School.
Seek the Lord in his strength. Seek his face continually.
Remember his marvelous works that he had done, his wonders and the judgments of his mouth. School.
O ye seeds of Israel, his servant, ye children of Jacob, his chosen ones.
He is the Lord, our God. His judgments are in all the earth. All be mindful always of his covenant, the word which he commanded to 1,000 generations. Recitation in concert comes from Philippians 1, verses 2 through 8. Grace be unto you, and peace from God our Father, and from the Lord Jesus Christ. Thank my God upon every remembrance of you, always in every prayer of mine, for you are all seeking requests with joy, for your fellowship in the gospel from the first day until now, being confident of this very thing, that he which hath begun a good work in you will perform it until the day of Jesus Christ. Even as it is meet for me to think this of you all, because I have you in my heart, inasmuch as both in my bonds and in the defense and confirmation of the gospel, ye all are partakers of my grace. For God is my record, how great and how long after you all in the bowels of Jesus Christ. Amen. This is our last lesson in this quarter. Today's lesson title is Dynamics of Family Leadership. Comes from Genesis chapter 35, verses 22 through 26, chapter 38, 24 through 26, and chapter 49, verses 10 through 12. Our key verse today is, The sepulchre shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, until Shiloh come, and unto him shall the gathering of the people be. This is Genesis 49, verse 10, King James Version. There is no such thing as normal, especially when it comes to the family. Okay. Sister White and I were talking earlier about how abnormal families are, so to speak. Normal is a misnomer. All families are dysfunctional in one way or the other. This dysfunction validates the need for family leadership. Someone's got to be out front. Someone's got to lead. Someone's got to hold the family together. Okay, that's where that family leadership comes in. Where there is no clear leadership, a family has no direction. And while husbands are traditionally the leader of their wives and parents the guide for their children, God is who we all should follow. It is important for husbands, wives, and parents to work alongside of God. His leadership is that which matters most. And when family surrenders to his will, the dysfunction in the family can be used as a catalyst for destiny. In other words, we need to keep God involved in our lives. Okay? We can't go out on our own. We ask God for guidance. Okay? Let God guide the family. Okay? We don't need to step out and say we're going to take over. Let God take over. God's not going to do us wrong. Okay? So, but we have to make sure that we put God first in all that we do. And therefore God will see us through whatever we're going through, whatever the family's going through, God will see us through all of it. From the Arctic pages of history to the bright spotlights of popular media, family dysfunction is nothing new. We hear about it all the time.
Throughout the book of Genesis, we've seen God extend his promises to Abraham and his family, despite the reality that both Abraham and his family were less than perfect people. And what that tells me is, we don't have to be perfect. God doesn't expect us to be perfect. He already knows we're not perfect. There's no way we're going to be perfect. We strive to live perfectly, but we all fall short. Okay? God understands that. Okay? God knows that. And if he still accepted Abraham and his family and all of his descendants, and he continued to bless them, what do you think he'll do for us? He continues to bless us in spite of ourselves. Right now, none of us are perfect, but God is still blessing us. Okay. Now, what if we were cut off because we weren't perfect? We'd be in trouble. In every instance, God's grace overruled, and their imperfection never offset God's decision to bless them. Just like with us, it never offsets his decision to bless us just because of our imperfections. The same holds true today. As believers, we have the assurance that there is nothing that can separate us from the love of God except we ourselves. Only thing going to separate us from God is that we reject him. In this lesson, we continue the theme of God's faithfulness to humanity by studying God's faithfulness to Abraham's family. We will also see how one of Abraham's great-grandchildren, Judah, will become a mighty and renowned tribe within Israel. You know, Judah ended up heading Israel, heading up the 12 tribes of Israel, okay, which was, nobody had a clue he was going to be the one to do that. Okay. Even his father had no idea he was going to be the one to do that. That is not who his father chose, or would have chosen, let me put it that way. But after everything happened, his father had to do that. Let's go to our first exposition, the family tree, Genesis 35, 22 to 26. And it came to pass, when Israel dwelt in that land, that Reuben went and lay with Leah, his father's concubine, and Israel heard it. Now the sons of Jacob were 12. The sons of Leah, Reuben, Jacob's firstborn, and Simeon, and Levi, and Judah, and Issachar, and Zebulun, the sons of Rachel, Joseph, and Benjamin, the sons of Lehi, Rachel's handmaiden, Dan, and Naphtali, and the sons of Zippah, Leah's handmaiden, Gad, and Asher. These are the sons of Jacob, which were born to him in Padan. Okay. Verse 22 begins with a terrible case of disrespect. I mean, this is probably the most disrespectful thing that you could do to your father or to your family. Reuben commits a hideous act of disrespect and incest. He sleeps with his father's second wife. Now, a concubine was considered a second wife. And back in ancient times, it was considered okay to have a concubine. Nowadays, the first wife would probably hang you for having a concubine. Okay, she ain't going for that. Okay, it's just not going to happen. Oh, no, that's total disrespect to her. So it's not going to happen. And we all know that, okay? This equates to a declaration of rebellion in the Jewish culture, though. I mean, the Jews frowned upon it too. Okay. Why are you sleeping with your father's wife? Such disrespect was not tolerated in Israel. It was a capital offense. However, Jacob found out about the treachery of Reuben, and rather than demanding justice, which was having Reuben killed or killing Reuben, he extended mercy and lived with the disrespect rather than retaliate against his own son. It took a strong man to do that. I'm not sure the average man could do that. It took a very strong man to do what he did. Okay? It took a strong man to do what Jacob did. Now, the second half of verse 22 consists of a catalog of the 12 sons of Jacob. The list proves the faithfulness of God, who assured Jacob that he would produce numerous offspring. Though the number 12 correlates with the national implication of the 12 tribes of Israel, as of now, this group is far from being a nation. At this point, the nation of Israel does not exist. The sons, at this point, lack the integrity and the maturity to lead anybody. They can't even lead themselves. Okay? The land remains under the control of the Canaanites, and the family's dysfunction is at a tipping point. You know, I'm sure it's spread throughout the family. Everybody, all the brothers heard about this, and they had some problems with it too. They probably wanted to do something to ruin it. Okay, because I'm sure some of those sons had a close relationship with their father. You know, the father was very close to the firstborn, which was who was it? The firstborn of Jacob's sons was Reuben, but he had a close love for Reuben, but he also loved Benjamin, which was the youngest one. So I'm sure that the others in between were, you know, kids fight for their father's attention. They want their father, they want to be their father's favorite. And if you got 12 sons, some of those sons want to be the favorite. It just goes without saying. They want to be number one in their daddy's eye. Okay. But daddy always has his favorites, but he can't let the children know who his favorite is. And hopefully here Jacob, past Reuben and Benjamin, hadn't, you know, picked any favorites. The reason I would say they were his favorites because they were born by his wife Rachel, who was Jacob's beloved wife. Well, in this case, in looking at this catalog here in verses 22 to 26, all of the sons were identified by their mother. And this provides some background for the rivalry between them. On one side, we had Rachel, which was Benjamin's beloved wife. Well, Rachel had just died, whose sons are Joseph and Benjamin. On the other side is Leah and her 6 sons, Reuben, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Simeon, and Laban. Okay, 2 sons by Bilhah, which was Rachel's handmaid servant, Daniel and Nephi, and 2 sons by Zippah, which was Leah's maidservant, Gah and Asher. So you can kind of figure out how this all lined up. Okay, who had the most sons in one lineage? I would say that the sons of Leah's handmaiden probably went with her 6 sons. So that was like 8 against 4, okay, in this pecking order. It doesn't get into that here, but I would assume that that's how they kind of lined up. Okay. Our second exposition, Judah's repentance, comes from Genesis 38, 24 through 26. And it came to pass about 3 months after that it was told Judah, saying, Tamar, thy daughter-in-law, has played the harlot, and also, behold, she is with child by whoredom. And Judah said, Bring her forth, and let her be burnt. When she was brought forth, she was sent to her father-in-law. She sent to her father-in-law, saying, By the man who these are, I am with child. And she said, Discern, I pray thee, whose are these? The signet, the bracelets, and staff. And Judah acknowledged them and said, She has been now more righteous than I, because that I gave her not to Shelah, my son. He knew her again no more. In these verses, we learn the story of Judah, who was fortunate enough to have had his own offspring. Okay. One son, married a woman named Tamar, but they never conceived. He was evil in the Lord's eye and suddenly passed away, leaving Tamar a widow with no children. Now, it was a custom back in those times that a widowed wife would have to marry the next brother of her husband's family. This practice made sure that the widow was cared for. In Judah's case, he behaved justly and arranged for Onan, his second son, to marry Tamar to fulfill the family obligation. But unfortunately, Onan, too, was too wicked in God's sight because he opted out of giving his deceased brother an heir. In other words, he didn't want her. So God smote him, leaving Tamar heirless. At this juncture in the story, Judah promised Tamar he'd allow her to marry his youngest son once he came of age. But he reneged on his promise and left her childless. So what he actually had done, he sent her back to her father's house. Okay. Until the youngest son came of age. But when the youngest son came of age, he reneged on that promise. So Tamar decided that she would procure her own future. She dressed up as a prostitute and met Judah in disguise. Okay. She tricked him. Okay. Sometime after intercourse, she was found to be with child. Judah's irate because even though he failed to uphold his family obligation to Tamar, he expected her to maintain her end of the bargain. So how could he? He didn't maintain his, but I guess he expected her to be more righteous than he was. And if you notice there in verse 25, she had all these things that belonged to Judah. And she came out with it. Okay. So Judah had to change his story. Okay. Tamar revealed that he was the father of the children. Okay. So Judah recognized that he was wrong and not Tamar and relents from his anger. Now on the surface, it appears that Tamar had tricked Judah with deception, when it was in fact not Tamar who was the deceiver, but Judah was the deceiver all along. So that's why in verse 26, Judah acknowledges the items as his and admits she is more righteous than I. Okay. Judah's remark validates her motivation. Tamar had the right to continue her husband's line and ensure her place in the family clan by bearing a son in his name. Now, folks, this is some family dynamics here. Okay, I don't know if I'd want to be tied up in this. To me, this would create, in modern families, this would definitely create some problems. Back during those times, it created some problems because Judah didn't want to do what he was supposed to do as far as family dynamics were concerned. Nowadays, if you did this, the family dynamics would definitely be all the way off the chain. It would be some serious problems. I can't even imagine what would happen. It wouldn't be nice. Okay, but somehow or another, this was what was supposed to happen. Okay, and once Judah admitted that this was supposed to happen, he had to accept it. He didn't have any choice but to accept it. Let's go to the third exposition. The real leader in the family comes from Genesis 49, 10 through 12. The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, until Shiloh come, and unto him shall the gathering of the people be. Binding his foal unto a vine, and his ass's coat unto the choice vine, he washed his garments in wine, and his clothes in the blood of grapes. His eyes shall be red with wine, and his teeth white with milk. With the three oldest brothers having been passed over for a positive blessing, Jacob comes to the next son in line, which was Judah. While he was not his father's favorite, Judah receives the official patriarch blessing. because he took charge among the brothers in convincing Jacob to allow them to return with Benjamin by offering himself as guarantor of Benjamin's safety, then leading the way when the family came to Egypt. In other words, the family was returning to Egypt, or going to Egypt. And the father here was reluctant. Jacob was reluctant to let his youngest son, Benjamin, go. But Judah steps up and he says, I'll take care of him. I'll be his guardian. And by him doing that, and by him leading the way to Egypt, he convinced Jacob that he should be the leader of the family. Judah stands out among the other brothers as the natural leader. You know, sometimes we become leaders by default. We don't want to be the leader. But by the things that we do, we are oftentimes chosen to lead. Someone's got to point the way. And we never know who that's going to be, oftentimes. We always assume that the oldest is going to be the leader, but that may not be the case. Okay? And that wasn't the case here. The three oldest brothers, they were passed over because of not stepping up to the plate, so to speak. Okay? In other words, they may not have wanted to be the leader, or they may not have known how to be that leader. So Jacob passed over them. Okay? Jacob's near the end of his storied life here. He is at death's door and is bestowing his parental blessings upon his sons. A few things are important to us here. The first we know from the above section, Judah's not perfect. We already know that. Okay? From deceiving his own daughter-in-law to engaging in cultic prostitution, Judah is a man with his fair share of flaws. He's got some flaws. However, God's blessing and grace abound nonetheless. Folks, we got flaws. And this should remind us that our relationship with God is not meticulous. It is grace-centered. And there is nothing so bad that we can do that God cannot be God enough and forgive us and still show us favor. So no matter what we've done, God still loves us. God will still show us favor. You know, we are crueler than God. Man has a hard time forgiving. With God, it's easy. We need to be, we say we're going to be God-like. Okay. Are we? We have a very hard time forgiving in some instances. But if we are going to be Christ-like and we're going to be God-like, one of the first things that I've learned is we have to learn to forgive. I didn't say forget, because we may not ever forget it. But we have to learn to forgive. We got to move on. Okay? We can't dwell on it. Okay? We've got to be able to forgive. And once we learn how to forgive, we're not out of God's graces, but then we will be able to see the fullness of God's grace by just learning to forgive. Judah is blessed to be the prized and ideal tribe among his siblings. Okay? He will be revealed. Okay, this is true because the temple will be established in the territory of Judea, Jerusalem. Moreover, the blessings of prophecy of Jacob predicts the royalty of King David, Israel's preeminent king. Okay, it comes down through the line of Jacob, through Judah, all the way down to King David. And I'm sure you guys all know what that line is. Okay, the royal line of David would provide Israel as a people her most notable kings. We had David, Solomon, and eventually the king of all creation, Jesus Christ. Verse 12 refers to overall blessings of good health and well-being to all of his sons. Okay. He wished them all well. He didn't just wish Judah well, but he wished them all well. While Jacob blessed Judah, Judah blessed the world. Such is the nature of God's blessings. They are faithful despite our merit and fruitful. They benefit others beyond us too. Have you ever got a blessing And it didn't just benefit you. We all have. Okay. So when we get our blessing, that gives us an opportunity to bless others, to be a blessing. You know, while we say, I got raised at work, that's a blessing. Okay. Well, that raise at work may give you an opportunity to be a blessing to somebody else. It doesn't have to be much, but who knows what they need. You may be able to buy somebody some gas at the gas station, doesn't have any money. You may be able to go to the grocery store and they standing there in line and they can't pay for their groceries. And you say, well, hey, I got an extra $20 this month. I'll pay for them. You know, just small things like that. It doesn't say because you got $100,000, you have to give them half of it, okay, to be a blessing to them. But we can be a blessing to others. And we oftentimes bless others and don't even realize it, don't even think about it. Okay? That's when it's truly a blessing. Now, if you got to think about it and dwell on it and worry about when you're going to get your money back and how you're going to get it back, are you being a blessing? No. Because if you couldn't afford to give it, you shouldn't have. But if you give it, you should give it from the heart and not worry about it. Okay? That's the way I am. If I give you something, I'm not going to give it to you if I can't give it to you. If I give it to you, I know that I can. And I want to be a blessing to you. And I'm not looking for anything in return. Because God's going to give me something. It may not come from the person whom I was a blessing to. It may come from someone I don't even know. Never met or seen before. I don't know where my blessing is going to come from. But I know God is going to bless me. God is blessing me every day. So I have no clue how he's going to bless me. So I can't hold it to Deacon Archie over there because I let Deacon Archie have $5 2 months ago. I can't hold Deacon Archie to being a blessing to me. I don't know. And if he's a blessing to me, he can't hold me responsible for blessing him. I have no clue. We don't know where our blessings are going to come from. That's the good thing about God. God blesses us, and we don't even realize it's a blessing. We don't even think about it. You know, sometimes we get in dire need, folks, and sometimes we don't know what we need. And God blesses us with it. And you know what? You go down the road, a couple of months later, you find out, you know, hey, that comes in handy. Okay? You know, I appreciate him giving that to me because now I can use it. Well, you couldn't, you thinking, what am I going to do with this? Okay? Right now, what am I going to do with this? Okay? But you may have use for it on down the road. And God has already blessed you with it because God knew you were going to have a use for it. The sage of Jacob's family shows us that God is able to bring us full circle. Even as our first passage shows the disrespect of Reuben, in our last scripture, Jacob blesses his sons. When taken together, these three passages show the different roles each family played in helping to establish who would become Israel, the nation. Some leaders are born, others are formed, but both need development. As it relates to Jacob's family and his sons assuring the mantle of patriarchal leadership over Israel, this can't be closer to truth. Just by virtue of their birth, each son was a potential candidate for the position, though none was ready. Eventually, Judah emerged as the one chosen to carry the promise. But it was only after he learned from his mistakes and changed his mind to see the bigger picture. The bigger picture was God's promise for his family. The promise wasn't just to Judah, but the promise was to the family. And once Judah realized that, hey, he had made some mistakes, he made a mistake with the young lady, Tamar. He learned that he had made a mistake there, and he learned from that mistake. You know, it takes a real man to learn from his mistakes and admit that he made a mistake. And that's what Judah did. He admitted he was wrong. And once he admitted that he was wrong, I'm sure the whole picture of his life changed. Okay? And God put him in a position to be the leader of the family. You know, as a leader, you're not always right. You have to be willing to accept that you're not always right. Some people can't accept that they're not right. They think they're always right no matter what, and they'll hold to it, even when they know they're wrong. Okay? They're just not going to give it up. But if you are a leader, folks, part of leadership is admitting that you are wrong. Because leaders are not 100% right. And we have to think about what we're doing to be able to say that we're right. We have to think about what we're doing to be able to go back and say, I need to correct this. Okay? I made a mistake. Not everyone can do that. Any comments this morning?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Back in those days, inheritors, it was handed to pass it down to the son.
Right.
In these days, you can't marry into inheritance. Can you?
Well, they do it all the time.
You say marry into inheritance?
Yes.
Deacon Archie, I don't know.
Well, I don't think you can, because what was there before you married cannot become yours.
That is very correct.
Only what you established together.
Right. Only what you established together.
After that.
Mm-hmm. Right. Is that what you meant?
Yes, that's what I was
Now, if you and your wife obtain things together, then she can inherit that. But if you had 500 head of cows before y'all got married, unless you will those cows to her, she can't inherit. Unless she is the only possible heir to it. Now, if you got kids or whatever, then the cows would go to your natural kids before they would go to her. Unless in your will you specified who got what. That's the way I understand it. Somebody may have a different view of it. I'm not sure.
My point of view was, these days, you can't marry into inheritance.
Back in those days, that the young lady that tricked Judah, she wanted to make sure that she was taken care of. Number one, because if she did not have an heir for her husband, then she's gonna be kind of left out in the cold. She wasn't gonna get anything. Okay. Her father wasn't going to leave her anything. If she did not produce an heir, you know, that to me that put an undue burden on a woman. Okay. She had to make sure she had a son. Can you make sure you're going to have a son? No. So, unless she had a son, she was still going to be out in the cold. What if she'd have had a girl?
Well, you know, there were some, I can't really remember where I read, but in the Bible, when they were dividing up this property and all, there were just two daughters, I think, and they contested, what about us? Do we not inherit our father's share? Because he didn't have sons.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they were entitled.
If he had no son.
Yes.
But if he'd had a son,
And they would not have had.
they would not have gotten anything.
And you know, as you were talking about forgiveness, and you know, the only way you're going to be set free is to own up to your own mistakes, not blame anybody else, and forgiveness. Because if you have a grudge with somebody, that person is going on living life to the fullest.
Mm-hmm. Doesn't bother them at all, does it?
No.
Because if it bothered them, they would ask you for forgiveness. Mm-hmm. But if it's not bothering them, they just keep right on the going. Number one, they may not even know you're upset with them.
That's right.
How you gonna know? How are they gonna know that you are upset with them unless you tell them? Sometimes they don't know. But most of the time they do. But there are instances where they have no clue that you're upset with them, unless you come to them and tell them, "Hey, look, I'm upset with you. You did this to me, and I'm not happy about it." then that gives them an opportunity to maybe explain their position, gives you an opportunity to ask for their forgiveness. Okay? And hopefully you can rectify the situation. You know, we can't rectify anything one-sided. One side can't solve the problem if there are two people involved. If there are two sides to it, well, you can't solve the problem by yourself. Okay? You've got to have the other party involved. And the other party may say, well, I didn't know I did you wrong. Or I don't think I did you wrong. Or something. But you can say, I forgive you anyway. And keep it moving. People are not always going to agree with you. People are not always going to see eye to eye with you. But guess what? You can't let that affect your walk. You got to keep right on doing what you need to do. Make sure you're right. And once you're right, hopefully they'll get right. Deacon Johnson?
You know, I don't know if it was a command or not, but Jesus did say that for me to forgive you in order to receive forgiveness for myself.
Right. I have to forgive you. If I don't forgive you, how am I going to forgive you? Because I'm still holding a grudge. If I'm holding a grudge against Brother Jones here, how can I go to God and ask him for forgiveness? I'm still holding on to that grudge. I got that grudge right here. Okay. Brother Jones drank my soda water. And I'm mad. Okay. I've been mad for 25 years. When we was in high school, he drunk my Coke.
Last one you had.
Last one I had. I spent my last dime to buy that Coke. And he drank it. Yeah, I know it was. Man, it was cold. It came out with them old machines where you had to slide around the bars, you know. So you slid it up there the way you could get it out of there. And he drank it. Beat me to it. Grabbed it and took off the run. Okay. And I'm mad at him. I have to forgive him. Okay? If I can't forgive him, then how can I go to God and ask him for forgiveness?
You know, that's funny that you say that, Coach, but you know, that stuff really happens so small as that.
Yeah.
You'll get upset about something that small that you don't think nothing about. But, well, look at it, they didn't want to get mad and keep mad for a long time. If they call out something that small, they didn't want to get a grudge.
And people do that. They do it all the time. They do it all the time.
They just find something to get upset.
And we all look at it right now as nothing. But to them, it's a big deal. But when you sound room.
You're right.
It makes you go somewhere. You know, we've been talking about bomb threats and all that kind of stuff, and fire alarms and what have you at work. And they've been ringing the fire alarms. They hate it. I'm going to a safe place. I'm getting out of the building. Yeah. Evacuating the premises. Any other comments this morning? Any other comments?
I got a question.
Yes, sir.
We're talking about married into an inheritance.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the purpose of prenuptial? Isn't that to keep someone from getting something that I've already gotten?
Yeah. There are several different ways to keep someone from getting what you already have. And a prenuptial agreement, I think, works more so to keep you from getting something that I may acquire with you that I think is all mine. The thing that bothers me is when we leave here, what are we going to take with us? Nothing. We brought nothing in, and we're not going to take anything out. So what's going to happen to them? Somebody's going to get it, aren't they? Okay. It may not be who you want to get it, but somebody's going to get it. Now, the smart thing to do is, if you have an idea of who you would like to have it, is that you put that in writing so that they get it. Otherwise, you have no control over it. In some places, then it just goes to the state. The state profits from your debt. And the state's going to do whatever they want to with it. So if you would want someone personally to have it, you need to put their name on some paper and say, I want them to have such and such and such.
Now, I think that prenup is, say for instance, if I were to marry you and I had this big business, and you know, this business flourished while we are married, but you did nothing to, you know, to acquire the you know, benefit of this business, then you are not to receive anything.
Okay.
Now that's, to me, that's very neat.
Okay.
I had this prior to marrying you.
Okay.
You've done nothing for this to become greater than what it was when we got married. But anything that we did together.
I'll go on with that. I've never had anything where I thought I needed to cut somebody out of it, you know. Unfortunately or fortunately, I'm not a rich man, and I don't think nobody's gonna be fighting over a little bit that I do have. You know, I got 2 dogs and a car, and I still owe money. So I don't think nobody's gonna be fighting over this.
Also, prenup can work in 2 ways. Say, for instance, just like Sister White said, she had something before. Say she was married before, and she's a widow now, but she had kids. Okay, you get married again. A prenup can protect your inheritance for your children,
Right.
for your descendants. You make sure they get, because you marry somebody else, they may have kids, and then you die, and they don't care if they give it to their kids, or your kids, or the rightful heirs.
Okay.
So prenup can work with it.
Okay. Okay. I had never had to deal with a prenuptial, so but that's good information. Good. Anyone else have any comments before we close? Minister Brooks? Anyone else?
I want to say something you said about blessings, where your blessings come from. And we give, you know, from our heart. Like this is what Mama said, you got to from the heart. Just keep it. You're right, you get it from the heart. But when we expect something, but people will understand. You wake up the next morning, that's a blessing.
Yes, it is.
And you might have a good health report. That's a blessing. It don't have to be money or something to give you. You know, stuff like that.
But I have heard of people that gave tithes in church, and they expected, because they gave their tithes, to receive a blessing, a monetary blessing, just because they tithed in church. And I'm like, that's not how that works. You know, just because I give $10 doesn't mean I'm gonna get 20 back. It's just like playing a lottery. You know, you put your money in the lottery, or you go to Louisiana and you put your money in one of them slot machines, there's no guarantee it's going to pay off, is it? Okay, not monetarily. But with God, God pays off every time. Because if we are a blessing to someone else, God is going to bless us. It may not be monetary, but we still receive a blessing. Maybe we do need some money. And guess what? If we keep living, we'll eventually get that monetary blessing. But that doesn't mean because we gave $10 last week, we're going to get 20 back this week. That's not how that works. And folks, the number one thing I found is you can't look forward to it. Because you don't know when it's coming, how it's coming, or where it's coming from. You don't even know what it's going to be. You know, I had an aunt that passed away a few years ago, and I sold some timber on some property that I have. And the guy was up checking on the deeds and everything. He said, "Did you know that you have a check for $2,000 for a right-of-way that they went across some property that you own that belonged to your aunt?" And I was like, "What?" I didn't even know I was an heir to the property, number one. But here I am I'm gonna get a check for $2,000 for some property that I didn't have a clue I was any part of. Okay. That was a blessing. I didn't know anything about it, but yet it appears.
And I don't remember when, but I was watching this TV, where this man had been extremely poor, but he was always happy. And I think one of the kids became real famous, real wealthy, and they built him this beautiful home. And so they were asking, about his work, his family, and all what he's done. And, personally, because I never really expected anything, but I was grateful for everything.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a good way.
That's where we have to be.
That's great. You only expect good things from God, not from man.
Right.
And so that's what he said. He said, I don't expect anything, but I'm grateful for everything.
God controls man. Okay, believe it or not. Okay. And God makes man do things that maybe man hadn't even thought about. Okay. To be a blessing to someone else. Okay. God himself is not going to come down here and set a pot of gold at our feet. God himself is not going to open doors for us. But God opens those doors through others. Okay, it may be the meanest person in the world that opens the door for us. Okay, because God has touched their heart. Okay, we think, well, hey, he's so mean, he ain't gonna do nothing for nobody else. But God can change anybody. God can use anybody. Okay, so folks, don't be surprised where your blessings come from. We don't have a clue where they're coming from. Just be thankful and continue to be happy. Be happy even if you think you don't have anything. Because in reality, you have a lot.
Still living.
You're still here. You still consider the consequences.
Have no chance.
Okay? You still have an opportunity. God is still blessing us every day. Okay, Sister Reno, thank you. He is still blessing us. Okay. And it's not always about money.
Kind of like your light bill.
Yeah.
You pay your light bill. It's highly unlikely that you're gonna get some money back for paying your light bill. But you got lights. You can turn the air conditioner on whenever you're ready to plug something up. You got power for it. I mean, that's kind of like you pay your light bill and you get blessed with access to all of the electricity.
And speaking of light bills, folks, I used to live on Mid-South's power line. Well, I had moved and I wasn't on Mid-South anymore. I didn't think anymore about it. Mid-South sent me a check about 10 years later for my deposit. I forgot all about they owed me a deposit.
But you weren't looking for it.
I wasn't looking for it. Okay. Came at just the right time. I was broke.